Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Peace Podcast. This is season 3, episode 7. Just give me a new definition of love, whatever that looks like. And so when we're thinking about our experience with love, the love that we know, the love that we have experienced for as many years as we've been alive, we don't really stop to consider whether we agree with that definition, whether that definition actually resonates with us. And so it made me think of some other areas in life where we do just that. Like we don't resonate with the definition that was given to us, but we've just been, experiencing that and living in that for so long that we've accepted it as is. And I think I've told you the story before where I think I was in my early 30s and I was having a conversation with some other teachers, and I was taught just by watching my mom that you cook dinner every night for your kids. It's a home cooked meal. Sometimes it might be, the Salisbury steak that you warm up in the microwave, but that it wasn't like an eat out type of situation, and that it was supposed to be like, a meat and some sort of starch and a vegetable. Like that's just what I grew up on. And so that's what I thought you were supposed to do. And it wasn't until that conversation that I realized that other moms aren't doing that, right? Like there was a mom who was like, yeah, well, my kid only eats like chicken nuggets, so that's what I make the majority of the time. And I'm not judging, nor am I saying that that's what you should do. I'm just telling you that this conversation was like baffling to me. And then the other mom was like, yeah, sometimes we just do cereal night and the kids eat cereal for dinner. And my mind was completely blown. And it was blown because the definition of what a mom was and what a good mom was had been created for me in childhood from watching what my mom was doing. And I never thought, even though I was an adult, even though I had my own kids, I never thought that there was an opportunity for me to really get curious about that and investigate it. Not investigated in the way of like judging her for what she did, but investigated in the way of, do I agree with it? Like, does it resonate with me? Does it align with me? And the same thing can happen to you with your definition of love. You see, the definition that you are currently holding with you is something that came from your past, because the way that we define things is based on the conditioning that we were given, based on the experience that we've had with that thing. And so when we sit with it, we might change our definition, but the definition that we have before we do that is a definition that came from our past. So love to you might look like, and I actually was in a relationship where this was a thing. Love to you might look like if I bring up something and that person isn't yelling, then they don't really feel the same level of love for me as I feel for them, because love looks like the inability to control your emotions when you feel passion toward a topic. So you might bring something to the table, and if that person doesn't have a strong reaction, they just want to have a calm conversation, that might not feel like love to you. And sometimes you can't quite put your finger on it because you're like, well, I don't really want to experience the yelling. It's not that I like yelling, but if this person isn't giving me some sort of an emotional reaction, then I can't quite feel loved by this person, because that's the only love that I've ever known. If in your experiences prior to this, love looked like having to work to earn some sort of reciprocation of emotion. So let's say that your parents were very emotionally unavailable and they were very standoffish. And, when high emotions were happening in the house, you had to deal with those emotions all by yourself. And if that was your story, then when you needed connection, when you needed people to love on you and to give you some sort of support, you might have felt like, okay, here are the things that I need to do in order to get that thing from the people around me. And that might have looked like, being nicer, or, doing that person's favorite thing, or trying to be perfect, or doing all the chores in the house, because you knew that if that's the way that you operated, then perhaps you would get what you needed. And so you have to really resonate with the fact that your definition of things, love included, have come from the past. And the reason I'm even talking about this in the first place is because this is what we consider Love Week, because Valentine's Day is at the end of this week. And though there was a point in my life where I didn't celebrate Valentine's Day, like I thought it was so dumb, like this is silly that we're only celebrating, our real feelings of love and our adoration for people on one day that Hallmark considered the day, because quite literally they make half of their profit off of this day. But when I sat with why that wasn't a very special holiday for me, I really thought about the fact that we didn't really celebrate it in our household. Like, it wasn't like my dad was going out and buying me cards and gifts and things. And so because I didn't really deem it that big of a deal. And then when I got into relationship with people, they were like, oh, well, that's silly, we're not doing it. And so to celebrate Valentine's Day didn't really have the same definition for me as it did for other people, like being considered and being shown just in a special way, that even though this day might kind of be a silly holiday, it still is a way or a day for me to show my adoration for you. I was in a relationship with people who were like, yeah, I'm not getting you anything for Valentine's Day, or we're not celebrating that, or, they didn't want to use it as an opportunity to celebrate me more. They wanted to use it as an opportunity to let me know that they had power over my emotions by, putting me in my place, basically. And so because of that, I carried that with me. And so I guess what I'm really saying is, if you have a definition of anything and you haven't sat with it, processed it, and tried to understand it, again, curious about it, then it didn't come from you. It came from somewhere else. Because in order for you to develop your own definition of something that didn't come from your past, you have to investigate it. Where did it come from? Do I actually feel that way? How do I feel? That's not really the way I feel about this thing. And so one of the things that you're also going to notice is if you haven't healed, then love will look like the old definition of love, because that definition serves you. So if you're somebody who, like we were talking about before, needs that emotional reaction in order to feel love, once you've healed, once you realize that the way that you were treated during those times was not okay, and it's not the way that people who respect you, love you, and care for you would treat you, once you start to heal that wound, then your definition of love will start to change. And that's why this episode is called Give Me a New Definition of Love, because the love that you have accepted from your past doesn't have to be your same definition of love in the future. And this doesn't have to just be in romantic relationships. This can be in familial relationships. It can be in platonic relationships. It's that you're realizing, once you get on this healing journey, that what used to feel good to you doesn't feel good anymore. Where you used to feel like it was a good thing for you to try to earn someone's love and adoration, now you feel like that shouldn't have to do all of that just to be loved by this person. And so when you start your healing journey, it's going to feel weird, because if you haven't healed, that old definition of love will go with you because it serves you. It reminds you of your past. It reminds you of those people in your past. And when you were a child, those people didn't make you feel a negative way. They were the only representation of love that you had. And so if now those things are showing up and you haven't healed and people are doing the same thing, then again, it's the devil that we know. I'm going to keep feeling these emotions, this connection, this trauma bond to people who are just like the people in my past, because in my past, that's what love felt like. In my past, it felt like I couldn't bring an emotional reaction to anybody because they weren't going to care anyway. So I learned how to deal with everything internally. In my past, I felt like the people who loved me and that I loved couldn't be depended on. And so now, just because I can't depend on this person doesn't mean that I'm going to feel like they aren't loving to me, because that's what I've always experienced. It's the devil that I know. But when you start to heal, your definition of love will change. And so if your definition today is connected to the trauma that you experienced in the past, and you haven't sat with it and really said to yourself, is this really my definition of love? Then you'll know that either the love that you experienced in childhood was a healthy love, or you're not quite on your path to healing yet because you haven't dismantled that entire system that was created for you as a child. Because when you heal, your definition will start to change. So what happened for me was there was a point in time where when I was going through my healing process, and I've told you a couple of stories about this, where I started to feel like I keep questioning the other person's motives. Like, I don't like the way the other person is treating me. And so that's when I started to really investigate what I thought love looked like. And I was like, I don't really like the way the other person is treating me. So I'm going to keep questioning that until I figure it out. And figuring it out did not serve me because that person was only operating at the capacity of love at which he could. And it wasn't until I decided that the definition that I have created for me was the only definition that I was going to accept because I loved me enough to walk away from situations that no longer served me. It wasn't until I resonated with that and aligned with that and accepted that to be true that I was able to say, this isn't for me. And what's for me will feel like it's for me, but you can only do that after you've started the healing process. Because when you're still going through the pains of your trauma, and you haven't started healing yet, you'll tell yourself that what's for you is what's familiar to you. And you'll continue to repeat that cycle. But when you've healed and you're on the healing journey, you will say, what's for me is for me, and I know what aligns with me, and I'm unwilling to accept anything that robs my peace or tries to change my definition that I know is what God says love is and what I have internalized as love myself. And so what are some things that you need to do? Well, right now, when you finish listening to this pod or watching this pod, the first thing you need to do is write down your definition of love. What is love right now to you? And don't give the hoity-toity definition that you think someone else is going to want to know because no one else is reading this but you. Like, if you were to tell yourself what feels like love and you wrote that down, what would it look like? I can tell you that 5 years ago, if I would have written it down, it would have felt like working hard to get somebody to not just love you, but to accept you. Love would have looked like gaining acceptance. And that's what I would have written because you have to get true to the nitty gritty all the way to the honesty of this one. You can't write down the fluff. You got to write down the honest stuff. Love feels like somebody being so emotionally dysregulated and so emotionally unavailable that if I can just change their perspective and the way that they see relationships, then perhaps I will then be enough and chosen, and that would feel like love. And so if you wrote those all down right now, which I would hope that you do when you leave this pod because this is going to be transformative for you, and it might be a ton, but define it. Define every single minuscule thing that you can think of that is your definition of love. And then once you start to heal, and you have to start to heal in order for this transformation to take place, once you start to heal, check in and determine if those definitions still feel like love. And when I say once you start to heal, I don't mean once you start going to therapy. I don't mean, and that's a great way to heal, but you don't have to wait until then. I don't mean once you start a coaching session with me. I don't even mean once you download my downloadable guide to healing the things you can't erase. I don't even mean that. What I mean is once you start to speculate that the way that you are operating in the world is from an unhealed place, and you start to get curious and wonder why those things are happening, once you start to do that, and then you get on a journey to healing, to figuring out self-love, to figuring out, whether it's people pleasing that's your issue or narcissistic abuse or whatever it is, once you start really figuring that out and healing from it, Then you check in to see if those things still feel like love. And if they do, and you know that they're toxic, then that part of you hasn't quite healed yet. And that'll be the data that you need to go back and determine what parts of you need to heal. Because if you're operating in the space where you feel like you have to earn love, then you're certainly operating from that internal childhood wound that says, I'm not enough. If you're operating from a space where you have to get a hysterical reaction in order for you to feel like it's love, then you're probably operating from a space of solitude where you had to deal with life for yourself. And that's also not what we equate to love. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to get on a healing journey, whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't have to be a coach. It doesn't have to be a therapist, but the reality of the situation is if you aren't on your journey to healing, whatever that thing is that can be your catalyst to be on your journey for healing is what I hope for you, because there's nothing worse than walking around in this world feeling like you're unfulfilled, but being surrounded by people that you've allowed into your space, but they're just not giving you the love that actually aligns with you. Not the love that you were given that was toxic from your childhood or past relational experiences, but the love that actually resonates with you. So on this Love Week, I really encourage you to change your definition of love, to really get curious with yourself about what love might feel like from your toxic past, but what you want love to feel like in the future, and find the bridge, whether it be your healing journey, whether it be journaling and processing yourself, whatever that is, whether it be finding new people. Find the bridge that takes you from the love that you used to believe was true to this new definition of love that you've created, because that definition is the definition that you could be and should be living if you broke free from the bondage that you're experiencing. If this video resonated with you today, please like, subscribe, share, go to my socials and follow me there. Make sure that you share this with others, tag them, give them my link to my channel so that they can watch for themselves or listen for themselves, because we know that information gained and kept to ourselves is selfish, but shared with the world, it could possibly be the catalyst for change that people need to break free from the bondage that they're in. And that's the only reason that I record these videos every week, is to ensure that you're not living in the same bondage that I lived in for literal decades before somebody helps you to see that you don't deserve to, nor do you have to be there. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time.